Well, initially, we were told the coronavirus outbreak originated in a wet market in China. The markets are typically large collections of open-air stalls selling fresh seafood, live or freshly slaughtered animals.
The practice has caused outrage, but it's not only happening in Asia. Wet markets like this are operating right here in the U.S.
Joining us now is Carissa Kranz, an attorney and advocate who's been sounding the alarm about wet markets in the U.S. for years. Carissa, this is some shocking news that many people who are tuning in, I know I for myself am surprised to hear this. Can you tell us more about the problem right here in the U.S.?
Yes. So there are thousands of these wet markets in the United States on U.S. soil. In New York, there are about 80 to 90 wet markets per PETA, which are not just in Chinatown. They're in all 5 boroughs. So a lot of people, one, have never heard of wet markets until COVID-19, and 2, are surprised to hear that they're happening on U.S. soil, especially after Lindsey Graham and Cory Booker, both sides of the aisle in Congress, are calling for a global ban on wet markets. They're calling upon the World Health Organization to impose a global ban, and yet we still have live and well right now, while the rest of the world is on a stay-at-home order, these live animal wet markets in operation today on U.S. soil, and it is a public health crisis, and it is really bad pandemic prevention hygiene, because the next pandemic could come right out of the United States, because the CDC says 3 out of 4 viruses that affect humans are of animal origin and zoonotic in nature. So we might be outraged about what's going on in China, and we might express outrage when we hear that their markets are opening up or that they have an underground trade or a black market of these live wild animals and other animals that are being slaughtered on scene and traded. But the reality is that whenever you have farmed animals, companion animals, wild animals, and any other type of animal that is alive and cramped and stressed out, tight spaces, close to one another, close to humans, alive and dead and slaughtered, there's going to be spillover of blood, guts, urine, feces, whatever, and that is a breeding ground for contagions like the coronavirus. And I'd also like to add that the next virus could be another COVID virus and a different strain. This could lead to a relapse, or this could lead to an entire new pandemic. Notably, while all this has been going on.
Well, let me jump in real quick, Carissa. Let me jump in really quick with you, because I want to focus real quick on wet markets. Is there a law that protects wet markets here in the States to continue to operate?
So the thing with a wet market versus like a normal slaughterhouse is they're unregulated. So there are new laws that are, especially in New York, that is preventing them from opening within 1,500 square feet of a school or a residence. There are laws in place, but those laws, there are certain wet markets that are grandfathered in. And right now there is there's no ban in the United States. There's no global ban. I think we are headed there. It is a popular argument right now. I don't think anyone really wants them in existence. We're just not really aware of it. I know that there was a petition for rulemaking filed by PCRM against the Surgeon General to try to shut them down in the United States. I know that PETA and Congress is petitioning the World Health Organization. The problem with the World Health Organization is that it's not going to be easily enforceable. So while commendable and popular, we're going to have a hard time making sure that it's actually followed, because we don't really have jurisdiction to enforce things in other countries. But what we can enforce is what's within our own soil. So there aren't any laws right now, to answer your question, to stop this. But there is legislation being written. The petition for rulemaking does set the ground for a lawsuit to be brought if the Surgeon General doesn't respond favorably, because when you have a petition for rulemaking on the federal level, it requires an agency response. So I do think we're getting there. I just don't think we're there fast enough. And the reality is with the stay-at-home orders and the executive orders that are going on, I filed a petition for rulemaking in New York. And if the politicians wanted to pay attention to it, they could stop these live animal wet markets immediately for a 90-day moratorium, while a law could be drafted and put into place to permanently ban these live animal wet markets, because they are a public health crisis. They do lead to pandemics. And we need to stop. If we care about not destroying more human lives and not losing more lives, we really need to stop doing what the actual cause of this. I mean, the vaccine.
Let me jump in really quick because we're out of time. But the last thing I wanted to ask you, aside from the ability to spread diseases, the concern about wet markets too on Asian countries were the animals that were there, bats, dogs, and cats. Is that something that we see in the States?
In a live animal wet market, you don't know what's there. It could be cats, it could be dogs, it could be farmed animals, it could be companion animals. You don't know what it is. It's unregulated, and that's the problem.
All right, Carissa Kranz, thank you so much for joining us, legal commentator, joining us to talk about that wet market topic. Interesting stuff there.